Welcome back to Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. I'm personal financial planner, columnist, and financial therapist Rick Kahler. Research tells us that 90% of all financial decisions are made emotionally, not logically. For nearly 4 decades, I've been helping people make better money decisions. So what makes my financial worldview different from most financial experts? I blend the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Good money decisions are not just about the money. So let's get started with today's episode. Welcome back to another edition. And if you've listened to us for the past 2 episodes, you know we decided to do another one with who? With Celia Clark, who is a food and body specialist. It's only taken me 3 times to finally get that down. And she resides in Scotland, which I don't know. You might have been. If you've listened to the past episodes, you've probably noticed that she's probably not a South Dakotan.
Certainly not, no.
So along the lines of the similarities between eating disorders and financial disorders, we've talked about a lot of fascinating stuff. And I can't wait to go back over this and kind of pull some of this information together. I had made a list of some things that I think there might be some similarities in, but I'm not sure. And one of those would be isolation. If there's any commonality here, and by isolation financially, it's the isolation of having a lot of money. It could also be fame. But having a lot of money in that, the people on your payroll, or the people closest to you are the people on your payroll. And it's really hard to go into like a group, like a 12-step meeting, and say, hi, my name is, and people immediately know who you are. I once had a woman that says, my friends tell me nobody tries harder to be middle class than I do. The shame and separation and isolation that can come with money. And I'll think I have one more thing before I get your response. We used to have a lady of great wealth come down and talk to our groups that we did. They were 5.5-day groups on money and how it was to have more than enough. And she popped her head in, said hi, I'll see you later this evening. And she just quipped, I don't know who has it worse, the ultra poor or the ultra rich. And she stopped and pondered. She says, at least the poor have each other. Really underscoring the isolation of those that were extremely rich. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, as you've heard me talk, can you see any similarity there?
So what's coming up for me is isolation in terms of body size, Rick. Mm-hmm. For those living in much larger bodies, they're really viewed by society in a very particular way. They're treated by society in a very particular way because of their body size. And I guess unlike wealth, which can be hidden to some extent, we can't hide our body size. Everybody can see that. And, because of the weight stigma that really is kind of embedded, really deeply embedded in our, it's a very toxic aspect of our culture, there's a significant othering that goes on. with folks living in larger bodies.
Yeah.
We know that because of their body size, they don't get access to healthcare in the same way. They are less likely to access higher end jobs in the job market. These are really sort of systemic kind of aspects of their experience that, are often not even noticed by those of us who maybe have more privilege in terms of our body size. There are clients, clients living in larger bodies who've been abused by strangers on the street because of their body size. It's in terms of isolation, I think there's for many folks living in larger bodies, not for everybody, but for many, there is this sense of being othered, not just by individuals, but by the culture, by the community, in much more sort of systemic levels too. So I would say the isolation piece really does exist.
Yeah, as you've talked, I'm equating a large body size with being financially poor or poverty, because a lot of those really related.
Well, there's a negative bias. There's a real negative bias towards those in larger bodies.
Yeah,
we are a fat phobic culture. Fat is viewed as bad. And often, it's this idea that, if you live in a larger body, then you should be doing something about it. Mm-hmm. And if you're not, then that makes you a bad person. Mm-hmm. Or it makes you X, Y, and Z. There's this real kind of negative rhetoric that comes around. When actually, people live in different body sizes. People genetically live in different body sizes. They always have done and they always will. But this kind of anti-fat rhetoric really, it really sort of emphasizes the isolation piece.
I love that there's this bias. They should be doing something about it. And that would fit completely with people who are perceived poor or in poverty. And I'm tying a stat once that I came across that the lower 1% of Americans, and we would say, or our data as of right now is 11.5% of Americans are in poverty. Okay. Go down to the lowest 1%. They are equal to the 68th percentile of the globe. Well, 68th percentile of the globe is obviously well above average. And so there's there can just be this huge stigma around it, and that you need to be doing something about it. And I'm not necessarily talking about when a person's really over indebted or has a financial crisis going on at some time. But there is definitely the stigma that here's what you need to be fitting into. You can't be happy and be poor.
Mm-hmm. I think. Or you can't live in a larger body and be happy. It's exactly the same kind of rhetoric that comes with it. There's just this real lack of understanding, real lack of awareness.
So with the small body, tying this back to
because of the toxic nature of our culture, people can become quite emaciated and still be viewed as healthy.
Yes. Oh, beautiful.
And still, the thinner you are, the more accepted you are. And that can go to dangerous levels before alarm bells, are sounded. Purely, again, because of the toxic nature of our culture.
That is a beautiful similarity, because the ultra-rich can be viewed as absolutely normal. They're thriving. They have no problems. Are you kidding me? And be completely unhealthy within. Tons of isolation, tons of guilt and shame over what they have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm seeing that similarity with somebody who's thin. Like, well, you got it all.
Mm-hmm.
You're fine.
Yeah. All your problems are solved. If you live in a smaller body, of course, you're going to be happy.
Yes. Yeah. That is super interesting. I love that framing. I had another one. And that would be secrecy and deception. With money vigilance will not talk about their money. I think societally this is true, and I don't think it's just related to money vigilance, but it's more pronounced that they can be very secretive about their money, not talk about their money. There is a societal shame around your money, my money, because people say, well, we talk about money a lot. And I suppose it could be food. We see food everywhere. But we don't talk about what we're worth, what our net worth is, or how much we make. And when I speak to financial professionals that think they don't have money issues, I'll say, well, try this tonight at the reception. Just go up to everybody you meet and ask them, how much did you make last year? What's your net worth? And then tell them what yours is, how much you made. And there's this nervous laughter. You can almost see the blood draining from faces. Like, no way. And so I'm wondering if there's a correlation there with food, around the secrecy, around the taboo, that we don't talk about this.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a cultural aspect to this. So as you were talking, Rick, I was thinking about, I've not lived in any other countries for any length of time, so I can really kind of speak about the Scottish culture, but it's really not okay to speak about money in Scottish culture. It's quite a taboo subject. Mm-hmm. It's not a subject people feel very comfortable talking about. And certainly you wouldn't ask people about the kind of money they earn or share what you earn. It's just not the done thing. Money's almost seen as that kind of dirty word of like, who would bring that up in conversation? So yeah, something about, cultural narratives around money and the kind of shame piece around that. Like, it's just not okay to be exploring that. But I also think there's a shame piece around the eating too. Many of my clients who live in larger bodies feel deep shame around eating in front of other people. Because of the size of their body, there are assumptions being made about them, and it's almost like those assumptions become more toxic if they're actually eating food. So there is this protection piece that it feels safer not to eat in front of other people or to eat less than everyone else at the table. But that can also be true for those clients who are under eating as well, who are absolutely terrified of gaining weight, who are absolutely terrified of being judged for what they eat. Many of the clients who are underweight have what we call body dysmorphia. So there's, they believe that their body is actually bigger than it is. So there is this fear around judgment, around being viewed as fat, even though they may be emaciated. So again, there's very much that kind of shame piece that leads to, eating in secret. And behind closed doors,
So that's interesting. I'm coming back to the isolation and see if this sounds right. If I have a large body, which I think I'm kind of tying out to be more of the being more impoverished or having spending issues financially. And what you're talking about, well, no, that could be the shame of eating in front of others. There is a shame that goes with spending in front of others. When I guess I've just contradicted myself. When you do have a lot of money, not wanting to appear that you have a lot of money. I mean, it can go both ways, because some want to appear they have a lot of money when they don't have a lot of money.
Yeah, so some people, it might be about the status piece, but for others who are actually very wealthy, there might be shame around that. So they might choose to drive an older car rather than the brand new one that's just come out of the showroom, for example, or, you know.
So the isolation could be, if I have the larger body, I'm going to eat in private.
Yeah, so there's definitely, I mean, there is isolation that comes with that, but it's driven by this need to keep things secret, to keep things hidden.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, or to lie about what's being consumed. And that can happen for both clients who are fearful of gaining weight and clients who want to keep what they're eating hidden because they fear judgment.
So it's the fear of judgment of spending when I shouldn't be spending. I don't want to be spending this money because I will be judged by others that why are you spending that money?
Yeah. And what, you know, it's the narrative that others may connect to the spending of the money or to eating of the food. You know, it's that narrative of what are they going to say about me if I do, you know, if I spend the money in this way, or if I eat this amount of food, or if I eat these kinds of foods.
Yeah, it's what I do in secret that I don't want to be seen by other people. I would suppose thin body, that could be the purging, right?
So there are, so for both clients who live in larger bodies and who live in much smaller bodies, there is a secrecy piece in both of those experiences. The fear of kind of being discovered.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, because there's an expectation of being judged negatively. Yep. It's that fear of being discovered. You know.
That really resonates.
Mm-hmm. And
either way.
Especially if there's binging going on, because, you know, it's hiding the food wrappers, or, you know, there's hiding the evidence that something happened.
Perfect correlation between fear of being discovered that I'm rich, fear of being discovered that I'm poor. Yeah.
And I think certainly for many of my clients, there's a strong link between weight and worth, and that's what drives so much of the behavior. And I guess for some of your clients, it's that link between money and worth.
Yes. And that would hit, one thing on my list was the low self-esteem.
Yeah, definitely. Well, when we have low self-esteem, we find other ways to measure worth. We find other ways to assess our worth.
So my worth, this probably would tie into the thinner body.
Yeah, so the smaller my body, the more worthy I am, the more worthy I believe I am, the more worthy society deems me to be. So that's what I'm going to work on. That's what I'm going to focus on. Yeah.
Yep, and the same thing with money, having money.
Yeah.
I listed one is how this affects negatively our quality of life. And I think there's some obvious things there. I mean, the underspending, I think we fleshed out that can absolutely impact quality of life, just in not being safe. And we've talked about the irony of feeling safe and not being safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we talk about a negative impact of having too much, and that is so relative. There is no dollar figure that is too much. But being wealthy, either in our eyes or other people's eyes, I think people could be struggling. Well, what is the negative impact on the quality of life? Well, we've just talked about the isolation. We've talked about a potential lack of connection with self and other people. It can be all of the energy consumed in managing wealth and the focus and complications that come along with managing wealth, which oftentimes culturally the response is get a grip. That's not a problem. Are you kidding me? I'd like to have your problems. Mm-hmm. Without even an understanding of the depth of that. And of course the projections that go with that. What do you see there as the impacts on quality of life? They seem obvious, but
yeah, so I guess there's two aspects to that. There's the kind of biological aspect, the more immediate biological aspect. So if we're under eating, there is going to be biological impact to the body. Over time, our body can become highly dysregulated, sleep's affected, hormones change, mood, memory, energy levels. If we undereat for long enough, we'll start reaching the kind of organ failure stage. It's, there's really serious risk to life there. But equally, when we're pendulating between the binge eating and the food restriction, that creates huge chaos in our bodies, again, putting our physical health at great risk. And if there's purging as well on top of that, there's, further increased risk too.
Like
quality of life. Yeah, there's the biological piece, but also the mental health piece. Often there's increased anxiety, lower mood, and some of that's just due to the chaotic eating patterns. As soon as we begin to regulate the eating and start nourishing the body properly, a lot of that begins to subside.
Just an amazing connection with money. As you talked about affecting sleep. Or not having enough money can keep you awake at night, and having a lot of money can keep you awake at night. A mood, same thing. I think there's the cultural bias that rich people are happy. Couldn't be further from the truth. Are some rich people happy? Oh, yeah. But some wealthy people are miserable. Some very famous people are miserable to the point of suicide. And I think we could go through a whole list of very famous and wealthy people.
Yeah. And I would say the same is true for also those who live in larger bodies. I think there's this myth that those who live in larger bodies are unhappy, miserable, depressed. And that's just simply not the case. There are some who are, but body size does not equate to happiness or unhappiness. It does not equate to worth, in the same way that money doesn't either.
Yes, I think those are extremely similar. What haven't we talked about that's top of your mind of similarities?
I mean, I think we've done a pretty good job. Nothing's coming to mind just right now. But yeah, I think we've done a pretty good job of finding the overlap, finding the parallels. There are so many, because I think at the end of the day, it really does come down to this, this sense of self-worth and whether our needs are met, and also about this piece on safety. I think those three elements really show up in both our challenges with food and our challenges with money.
So that was safety?
Yeah, so the safety, the need, so whether our needs are being met, and the worth piece. If we feel worthy enough, then actually body size is irrelevant. If we feel worthy enough, then actually how much money we have in the bank is irrelevant.
Yeah. That's a pretty common, a really deep issue of I am adequate.
Yeah.
And which is, well, it's definitely rare if you're experiencing any type of financial or eating disorder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The feeling is I'm enough.
Yeah. So most of my clients struggle, with at least one of those three things, if not all. So there's usually low self-worth. There's usually a lack of safety in the body, as well as, perhaps in external relationships, external environment. And there's also that unmet need piece. And the work is about addressing those three areas. It's about increasing safety. It's about improving self-worth. And it's about looking at what needs are unmet and finding alternatives so that it isn't the food that is used to meet those needs.
Oh, I love that. I really like this safety piece. And I wanted to mention before we ran out of time that Celia is uses IFS, which she termed as parts work. And we talked with parts a little bit going back and forth, knowing that not all of our audience is familiar with internal family systems. That's what IFS stands for. And you're talking about the needs, and I'm framing that in the needs of our parts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And finding out the good intentions of our parts that are leading us to overspend, underspend, overeat, undereat, and that it's a good intention. Mm-hmm. And I think this is really new news to a lot of people, especially to those critics within.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have a good intention in what they're trying to do within the system.
Yeah, absolutely. Because so often food is viewed as the problem, but actually food isn't the problem. Food is the solution to the problem. So it's about discovering what the problem actually is.
Oh, I love that. You probably have given me enough ideas for several columns here. Is the solution to the problem. Oh my!
And the same with money. Money is not the problem. Money is the solution to the problem. So what is the problem? Yeah. What problem is it solving? Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, I will be thinking about our conversation for some time. Unfortunately, I have a transcript of this, and I'm going to kind of let this all settle and see what comes out. I just so much appreciate talking to you and flashing out these commonalities. And I think we've done a pretty good job of reconstructing our 2-hour conversation that we had in England.
I think we have.
So, where can people find you, Celia?
Yeah, so they can find all my offerings on my website, which is www.celiaclark.online.
And Celia has a podcast that you might want to tune into as well. And then as you're listening to her, just put money. Every time that food is mentioned, just put in money. And there
are likely to be similar parts going on. Yeah.
Celia, thank you so much for joining me.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much, Rick.
Take care.
Thanks for joining me, Rick Kahler, for another episode of Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. This is where I combine the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Remember, every financial behavior, whether it appears illogical to you or others, makes perfect sense when we understand the underlying beliefs, feelings, and thoughts. Sign up for my weekly blog at financialawakenings.com. I hope you'll join me again for our next episode.